Hi, I'm Steve Rosales, and welcome to another edition of Belmont Journal. Today, a continuing episode of our recurring Chat with the Chair. Today's Chair of the Select Board, Roy Epstein. Roy, welcome. You came back.
Nice to see you again. Yeah,
I didn't frighten you away the last time.
No, not last time.
Well, I appreciate your courage. This is a good chance to have a chat, have an informal chat, a variety of topics, and have an exchange of ideas.
Yes.
We agree on some, we disagree on some, but that's the way it is. That's the way life goes.
It reminds me of flavors of ice cream.
That's true. I've often said that. You must be a good listener. That is why they make chocolate and vanilla. But every so often, as I told you, Roy, if you get the swirl, the little soft, you get the swirl in the middle, it's a mixture. It's just as sweet and just as good. So there you go. Let's hope that we will end that way. All right. So it is now December 8th. It is Friday, December 8th, 2023. We've finished the November town meeting, and we have still, it's a hot agenda. We're in the holiday season, but nothing slows down here in the town of Belmont. So why don't we start off with sort of a November town meeting update? We had some pretty rollicking activity going on in that town meeting, so take it away.
That was, well, honestly, Steve, I think civil service is one of the best debates in my experience in town meeting. I think that I didn't know what to expect going in. It struck me as something where people really worked hard. I think a lot of people changed their mind, maybe even during the course of the debate. So I think town meeting really achieved its purpose.
Well, it was a good debate. And I said my piece. Everybody had their chance to say their piece. But it was a respectful debate. We didn't get any boos or catcalls from the audience. There was no name calling. There was strong feelings on both sides of the issue, quite frankly. But I thought it was a professional, courteous debate. And the moderator Widmer, he sort of controlled the discussion from going down certain rabbit holes, I'll say, and kept it had some decorum. But people said their thing, which is why, and then I'll stop because I'm here to chat with you, but that would not have been, in my opinion, the same type of debate if that was not in live and in person. We had a couple on the screen, but live and in-person debate, I think, is you get value out of that. And I don't think you get that same type of decorum or passion, or at least observations by those in the seats when it was online or remote.
Yeah, I agree. That raises another question about the town meeting, which is the number of people who were participating remotely. It was high, and it actually grew over the 3 days, and I know that's been a concern for Mike Widmer and actually Ellen Cushman and me and Jeff Lubian, because the number of people who participated remotely was higher than we would have liked.
Well, don't give them the opportunity.
Well, we're going to do remote in January just because we said as much last time, and it's just one night and one question. But going forward, there's a question about whether to do hybrid because it's actually very complicated for the staff. It puts a big burden on Ellen Cushman, and I agree with you that having a live meeting has a lot of advantages.
Well, body language, I'm an advocate I have an opportunity to advocate for various things. And body language, looking someone in the eye, seeing what they're doing, seeing if they're paying attention, it's invaluable. When you get up at the mic, no matter what your position, you're there to persuade, right? Otherwise, why would people get up there? They want to know what you're doing, but the purpose is to persuade, whatever the point is you're trying to make.
Well, and I thought the participants did a great job. But look at the outcome. It was, for the civil service question, it was really a landslide. It was slightly more than 60% in favor. So,
well, we'll see how that works. I mean, there were strong things on both sides. So, I don't know when that comes into being. Is that effective now, do you know, or is there an effective date, or does the Attorney General, anybody have to sign off on that, or where does it go from here?
No, the only issue that I'm aware of was there's a 7-day actually I learned this at town meeting, there's a 7-day waiting period after any warrant article is approved, where technically it could be challenged. But that 7 days came and went, so it's done. There's no further review.
Okay, so, but some, okay, so this is different from, I guess, what they call like maybe a home rule petition.
Yeah.
Probably not so great with my parliamentary procedure. I'll leave that to Moderator Widmer, but home rule petitions have to go forward to either the legislature or to Attorney General for some
Well,
type of
home
like
rule
zoning or things, certain things. I'm trying to remember what they are.
Bylaws.
But bylaws
Yeah,
have to get other approval.
Yeah, by law, I think the Attorney General reviews them for, they have certain language things they look for. And, but this is just this was a pure town meeting decision, no further review.
All right, so so this begins when? So people can apply now if the chief of police posted positions right now, people could, is it effective now?
I believe so, but I think as a practical matter, Chief McIsaac is drafting hiring policies as he described during town meeting.
Okay.
And
Well, we'll see how that works out. We do need a full police force, and that would be something nice to have, I would think, huh?
well, and he committed to having public input on the hiring policies, but that should all be wrapped up by late winter.
All right. Okay, so that was the hot item, but we had other things. We had, what else do you want to chat about the town meeting? The selectman's position, I think you were victorious to the extent that's the right word, but your proposals, I believe, carried the day, mostly, if I remember correct.
Where did we not carry the day?
That's what I'm trying. Well, sometimes, you don't get the result you want from town meetings.
Well, let's see, the other ones that come to mind are the restaurant zoning, which I think was helpful. I think also it was largely due, in fact, entirely due to the select board to slow down the process a little bit on the restaurant zoning so that it'll be finished up actually in this coming spring, because the parking piece of the restaurant proposal this past November wasn't fully baked. But it'll be fixed up by the springtime.
Well, we'll have some, it certainly does open the door a little bit. It's not carte blanche for restaurants, but certainly as someone that on occasion has gone before the various boards, zoning board of appeal, the planning board for restaurant or certain business opportunities in certain zones, it certainly made things a little bit clearer for restaurants.
It was not clear to me that the special permit process was really a deal breaker for many restaurants, but it does simplify the process, and anything that makes it faster and cheaper for the participants is good.
Well, it had been a deal breaker if certain areas. Well, let's put it this way. So there used to be a Brigham's up in the Cushing Square area.
I know.
And that was a restaurant, ice cream, sandwiches, coffee. That's what it was. The district was not zoned for restaurant use. There's now a new restaurant there, and is only there because it kept the same usage. So the use was grandfathered. But had he wanted to change the use and maybe done some other type of restaurant opportunity, that he may not have been so able to do so. But anyway, that seems to be addressed at some point with some kind of control still, but still eases the burden on some of the people looking to come to town.
Yeah, I agree. It's an improvement. Also, there's a separate level of oversight for restaurants. I thought it would come up at town meeting, but it didn't. There were no questions about, even in a by right process, what happens if a restaurant is a nuisance with odors or noise or lights or something like that. But it turns out that that type of oversight is still exercised by community development and the health department separately from the zoning.
They do have, they do have separate things for odors, emissions, cleanliness. Those things still all remain in effect.
So by right doesn't mean it's kind of a free-for-all. There's still a degree of control over restaurants, which is appropriate, I think. So.
I think so too, and I guess the parking issue is always a key. So that'll be addressed. But at least we're doing something, because there was always a reason why certain restaurants, or why it was easier for a restaurant, even perception, but I think reality, to open in certain other communities other than our town.
Yeah.
So there you go. So, okay, so Anything else about town meeting?
No, I think it was good. The civil service, I have to say, was a big relief because, sorry about that. And it was not explained very well, frankly, in 2020, but we worked much harder to explain it this time around. And I think people understood it and evidently agreed with us.
Well, there you go. So the proof will be in the pudding. So let's see what happens. Let's see if it assists the process or not. But I'm hopeful that it does.
Yep.
So, and I hope that everybody goes in with good intentions. Let's put it that way. To work out things with the unions and the personnel and the management. There's always a good-spirited debate, I'll put it that way, between union and management. So hopefully you'll address those issues that concerned those that wanted to keep civil service and come up with an amicable solution.
Well, I can tell you that is certainly the hope and the intent of the select board.
So good luck to both sides. We'll see how it works. Okay, so that takes care of November update. So, all right, so if anybody who's been watching anything on TV, whether it be the warrant committee, the school committee, the select board, it's budget, budget, budget. It's 24/7 budget, and parallel with budget is override. So what's the story with the budget? What's the story with the status of a possible override or overrides? What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Chairman?
Well, Steve, it's clearly nobody is happy about paying taxes or even paying more taxes, but we've studied this very closely, everybody, this town administration, select board, warrant committee. What people may not realize is that just to keep things going as they are today, keeping basically everybody employed on the town side and keeping all the teachers hired on the school side, it's going to require an override, and I'll throw out the number because it was stated at the warrant committee, just to do things as we're doing today is going to take an override of close to $7 million in the springtime. So that the select board, I believe, is committed to at least delivering the services that we have now, which means that the override has to be at least $7 million, which is a source of dismay, obviously, to a lot of people, but when you go over the numbers, that's the conclusion you have to reach.
Okay, now we had a recent override attempt.
Yep.
How much was that?
6.5.
6.5? And what was the result of that?
It went down.
It did. So, and that was just recent. Well, within the last few years, if I remember correct.
It was. It'll be 3 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. So what makes people think that the town's going to do it at 7 million, if not more?
Well, then there are no certainties here, Steve, but I think what happened 3 years ago was a lot of confusion about free cash and also ARPA money. At the time of the override 3 years ago, the town was instructed by the state and federal agencies not to use ARPA money for budgeting purposes because there were potentially strings attached. Even though for Belmont it was a lot of money, they said don't use it for budgeting. And in addition, there was a pretty high free cash balance. So I think people were skeptical about the need for an override. Then it turned out, really by chance, that the ARPA money did become available, and that's what kept us going for the last 3 years. But the ARPA money is gone. Well, at least it's not renewable. There's no more coming in.
That was what was from COVID? So
COVID,
the
yeah,
ARPA money, I don't know what the acronym is, but that was the
Rescue Plan Act.
rescue plan from COVID.
That's finished. That's not going to repeat.
Okay.
And I appreciate the point about having high free cash balances. So the override proposal this time around is going to explicitly show how free cash is drawn down. So when it's all over, there will not be any more what we call excess free cash. It's maybe not the best term, but that's the term we've been using.
Well, free cash isn't necessarily free. I mean, just for the benefit of some of our viewers, free cash is not free. It basically, I think if I can identify it correctly, it is additional revenues that have come in that are above what has been projected in the town budget, plus any unexpended funds from various line items.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's used essentially as a bank account, as a savings, as a reserve.
But just for the benefit of the viewers, so if Department X was budgeted at $500,000, and they only spend $400,000, and they have $100,000 left, that $100,000 gets certified by the state, but they can't spend it. That goes back to the town and somehow comes out as free cash to be used the next year. Does it not, or am I misunderstanding a piece of it? That's a piece of it.
That's close enough, but it turns out that the money in what we can call the free cash account acts like a savings account.
Okay, that's understood. Okay.
And it's a policy of the town to keep a certain amount on reserve because you have to be prepared in case of some unexpected.
No, I understood. Got to have some available, and I'm sure Moody's and the bond raters, they want there are certain obligations or standards I'm sure we have to keep via the state or whatever it is, best practices, and I'm sure that there's certain things that the bond people or the rating agencies look at, like what do we got in the bank? Just like anybody getting a mortgage, I would think. What do you get in the bank? Can you pay it back?
And they look to have at least a certain minimum amount.
Okay,
we
fair enough.
had balances that were a bit higher than that, but the plan for this override is to spend those higher balances down to the guideline floor, and then that's to minimize the size of the override. But you're still going to need a $7 million override just to keep the lights on, so to speak.
Okay, so when do you think, what do you think the timeline? I mean, everybody's discussing, I see, look, I won't go into it now, but if you go online and you go into the selectmen's page or select board's page or anybody's page, there's all kinds of scenarios on and over, all different versions and all different options and all different things. So I commend people to go take a look at that. But when do you think there'll be some finality as to what's going to happen and when?
I think relatively soon. The select board is going to be discussing this in some detail on Monday night. And there might be a proposal Monday night, but certainly by early January.
And who makes that final? Who's the decision maker? Am I talking to the head of the decision-making body? Is that who it is?
You are. So
okay.
This is a select board decision.
So you'll take input, I'm sure, from warrant people, public, school, departments, and then come up with whatever your strategy is or whatever your decision would be, and that's going to be it. When do you expect that to be on the board, on the ballot?
Oh, it'll be on the April ballot.
This coming April?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to be clear, because if there's no override, or if an override is on the ballot but is not successful, it's going to have a very dramatic effect on the town. We're talking about major layoffs on both town side and school side because we won't have the money to pay people. And personally, I think that would be a disastrous outcome. We need to keep the town at least doing what it's doing today.
All right. Well, let me give you a little bit of a different spin on this. Okay. So I can speak for me personally. My personal view is I'm going to wait to see what happens. But I would be more inclined to vote for an override if I knew what the override money was going to buy. In other words, I'm less inclined, and I'm not saying one way or the other, but I would be less inclined in theory to vote for an override if it's just going to go into the general fund to be used for the heat bill or to be used for willy-nilly or as opposed to say, oh, I want $7 million. $7 million will fix 4 miles of roads, or will fix whatever length of sidewalks, or would allow us to hire some more DPW people, or would allow us to hire 3 more police officers, or would allow us to hire 16 more teachers, or to put back some programs. If I knew what the money was being earmarked for, and I knew what I was buying, I would do that. Many years ago, even before, I can't remember, it was before or after I was on the board, and I was a lot younger then, we had a trash override, and it was purposed or dedicated for trash removal. And people voted, do I want trash removal or I don't want to have trash removal? As opposed to, oh, 7 million? What's it doing? I don't know. So again, just my perspective.
Well, this, I'm not saying the number is 7 million. Well,
I
I'm
get
not
it.
saying the number will be 7
I'm
million.
not looking
but
for a
se-
commitment here.
but-
It's going to come maybe Monday. We'll know.
But remember, Steve, 7 million just, pick your department, 7 million just keeps the existing departments going. When we're talking about additional services like repair more sidewalks, hire more police officers, extra teachers, whatever, that's on top of that.
Well, it's okay. Well, and then you can state your case. I mean, I'll stand by my comment. I mean, I would be less inclined to say, here's $7 million, I'm going to vote yes, and then just have somebody allocate it all to the schools.
That won't happen.
Well, says who? Town meeting could make it happen. So it's you know, I see the school departments, and I got up. They have a big budget. The numbers, you can quibble with the numbers. I'm not necessarily buying the numbers that I'm hearing, but for various reasons. But you know, I don't like some of the tactics. I don't like some of the scare I just don't like it. I think it's a little unseemly. Because the rest of the town, you know, last time I looked at the budget.
Yeah.
So here, this thing here, because the schools, if I'm looking at this thing correctly, get 66% of the money. Currently, 66% of the money. $72 million overall, shared expenses, 66% of the money for less students. But that's a question for another day. This is chat with the chair. So now we've dealt with override. Okay. MBTA communities, zoning.
Yes.
Where are we on that? The state says we're supposed to have some kind of action plan that allows us much more density in certain areas. So give us an update on that if you can.
Well, we had a meeting yesterday to figure out what the timeline might look like. Unfortunately, it's moving a little more slowly than I was hoping. So rather than come before the town meeting in spring, it's going to be in the fall next year, but it's got to be sometime in 2024. We have a consultant who is doing the legwork of figuring out exactly what density goes where, but it's going to be clustered actually in different parts of town. There's going to be some, it's part of the law, some of it's got to be around the train stations, so that means Waverly and Belmont Center. But it's also going to be scattered around other parts of town, generally areas that have proximity to bus transit.
Okay.
So,
What's the number? I think I know the number, the general number. How many more units are being proposed?
There's no number at the moment. There's a mandate to create zoning for a number that a lot of people find very shocking, 1,632 units to be theoretically possible under the zoning. It doesn't mean that anything will be built, or it doesn't say what number will be built. It just says the zoning has to be in place to allow that to happen. But when and how much of it will happen is really unknown.
Well, I'll put on my cynic hat. It's the camel's nose in the tent, if that's the right analogy here. So if you don't have to build it, why do we have to plan for it? That's a rhetorical question.
Yeah, well,
because it's just some mandate, and I'm disappointed in our state senator and our state representative if they voted for this, knowing our town as it is. I don't know where to put it. Where are you going to put it? Where are you going to put 1,600 units?
My own view is that I would be very surprised if 1,600 units were built in Belmont. I think.
What if someone came in and said, I want to build a 20-story skyscraper?
No, but that wouldn't be permitted. That wouldn't be permitted under the zoning. Because the zoning, no, because the zoning is zoning, so there will be height requirements or height limits and setbacks and so forth. You wouldn't be able to build something that large.
Okay, so where would you put them? And if that's the case, why would we need to plan for them? We don't have the land unless you're putting it in Rock Meadow, or you're putting it over the train tracks, or where else? Where else are you going to put it?
Well,
where else do you put it?
So the idea is that
I don't mean to beat on you,
no,
Roy, because
no,
I
let me
I don't like the whole idea of the state mandating what towns need to do to begin with. But go ahead.
listen, but it's out there, and the Attorney General has declared that they will come down heavily on towns that don't
Yeah,
comply.
okay, so
That's the
all right.
position that we're in. Now, the way they get there is by allowing greater density. So in what's now, say, a neighborhood of 2 families could be replaced by 3-family townhouses or 4 families. I have to tell you, Steve, if you go into Cambridge on Mass Ave at Cedar Street, which is, you know, where the bike path goes for Alewife, it cuts across Mass Ave on its way to Davis Square?
I do.
I was there the other day. There's a very interesting spanking new building right on Cedar. It's number 1 Cedar Street in Cambridge that shows what's an 8-unit building on a 7,500 square foot lot. It actually fits in pretty nicely. They had a good architect, and it shows that you can achieve greater density on a small lot, and it can fit in. And I think that's the idea. It doesn't fit in everywhere, but there are certain places where you can fill in like this, and I think that's what the idea would be.
Well, all right. Well, I'm still a cynic. I get it. You know, my comeback would be, well, that's very good for Cambridge. They do a lot of things. We're not the same. We're not Arlington. We're not anything else.
Yeah.
But 1,600 units, how many will have cars? Where are you going to put them? I mean, there's just no place to put them. And if I learned anything from my time on the selectmen and time since, is that people in the Waverly area and other areas are already screaming about the density of those areas. So to make them even, I mean, we won't even deal with kids. We won't even deal with that. But
No, I agree.
economic impact. But
I'm probably getting ahead of myself. I agree with you that if 1,600 units were actually built, that would be a big impact, because the town only has about 8,000 residential structures anyway. So that would be a huge effect. But I think one reason our consultant is working as slowly as they are is because they're finding it difficult to figure out buildings that will fit into the small lots we have in Belmont when it's already built up. So that's on them to figure out how to do all this in the next couple of months.
all right, well, we'll see what happens. Well, we got like a minute left. So, special town meeting in January. One item.
One item.
You got a minute. What is it?
It's going to be to consider whether the assessor should be converted from an elected position to appointed. It'd be similar to the question we had this last time around of whether the treasurer should be elected or appointed.
Okay, and how's that getting? Is that a citizen's petition? What is that?
No, there's actually some sympathy in the select board for doing this.
All 3 of you?
Uh,
I won't commit. I'm just asking. I got one of them here.
It's at least 2. I think it'll be 3.
All right, well, I guess that'll be something we can chat about. When would that be? When is January town meeting, do you know?
That town meeting will be January 22nd.
22nd, okay. Well, perhaps if you have enough coverage to come on back between now and then, you can give us an update on that. But that'll be a remote one, right? One item.
One item, remote, yep.
All right. I have thoughts on that, but that'll have to wait for another day. I have thoughts on everything.
Well, maybe we should talk just after the town meeting, Steve. Then we can be Monday morning quarterback.
All right, certainly would be easier. Anyway, well, that does it today. We're plumb out of time. With me today is Roy Epstein. He's the chair of the select board here for Chat with the Chair and Belmont Journal. For our producer, Joanna Zuvelis, Matt Simonelli, and new camera person, Erica, I'm Steve Rosales. Take care.
Major funding for the Belmont Media Center is paid by franchise fees from Comcast, Verizon, provided through the town of Belmont. Additional support is provided by our business and community sponsors, including Russian School of Mathematics and MAN, Monderer Design, Tamsin Kaplan, Alden Lock and Security, Nursing on Demand, Trinkdish and Craft Beer Cellar, and by Bethel Temple Center, Belmont Chinese American Association, National Association of Armenian Studies and Research, and by you. Thank you. Support live and local TV coverage of public meetings, school events, town activities, and hyper-local news by donating to BMC at belmontmedia.org/donate.